Hi, my name is Joe, and I'm a home decor overspender. Hi, Joe. I made a breakthrough. I found HomeSense. It's unreal. So many brand name sofas. I bought one.
Oh, wow, really?
It's okay. The prices, so low. Lighting, unexpected. Rugs, handcrafted. Wall art, eclectic. I go back like every week. No, it's always different. New unique decor, same great savings. Every time you go.
Field trip.
HomeSense. Standout pieces, outstanding prices.
Blog Talk Radio.
Hi, this is Jennie Walker, and welcome to Closet Conversations. Today I have a very special guest. His name is Mitchell Karp, and he is going to tell us all about this fantastic vintage event taking place in Palm Springs during their Modernism Week. And it's called the Curated Vintage Event. This is a gathering of vintage clothing sellers that will be coming together in Palm Springs. Mitchell is coordinating all of this, and I am one of the vendors. So I'm so excited. It's my very first vintage show. I couldn't be more excited to be going, and he's going to tell us all about it and give us some context about how he's involved in this, how long he's been doing it, his background, which is extensive in retail and vintage, and give us a scoop. So, Mitchell, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jenny, so much for having me. It's really a pleasure to be here.
Oh, you're so welcome. So tell our listeners, listeners are mostly resellers, people who love vintage fashion in the context of mostly they're acquiring them and reselling them, which is, perfectly spot on for this kind of show. A lot of vendors who support people in the reselling community through their products and things like that. So those are our listeners, people who are out and about, who are in a position to find vintage, and they're selling it online, they're selling it in all kinds of places. But selling your vintage at a vintage show, now that's something I've always wanted to do. It's been on my list, and now I get to do it. So jump right in and tell us all about this event.
Sure. The show is my idea, and it coordinates with Modernism Week in Palm Springs. Modernism Week is the celebration of architecture and homes and design, and I wanted to bring in fashion, which would make it three-dimensional. So what I've done is I've created this event where I have edited vendors who have a certain caliber of vintage, and I have a beautiful environment that it takes place in. It's at Temple Isaiah in gorgeous downtown Palm Springs in the Old Las Palmas section. It's in a beautiful ballroom with crystal chandeliers, and we have about 20 dealers getting together to exhibit their finest vintage that they've collected. Some of the dealers are stores, and then some of the dealers are private dealers, like people that would sell perhaps maybe online, but not a brick and mortar store like you and I have.
Right. Okay.
So it's a beautiful event. For those of you out there that are vintage collectors, this is definitely a show that I would want to put on my radar. Usually these shows are geared towards the major cities, and beautiful Palm Springs. Who doesn't want to come to Palm Springs for the weekend? That's what I say. With the palm trees, the sun, I think of poolside, I think of caftans. So we created this show with the dealers that I had that were existing. There was about 10 of them, and I rotate dealers every time we do a show so that there's a lot of variety. And we also want to create the correct mix of product for the public to come and look at and to come and buy. And we are so very honored that you're joining our show, because I've gotten so much interest in all the archived Moschino that you have in your store. So I have dealers calling me, I have people calling me. It seems to have picked quite an interest.
Gosh, I am so excited to hear that, because, for the longest time when I thought about the Moschino that I have, I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is such a micro niche, and who are these people who love Moschino? And I think that because I'm so new at having this collection and offering it for sale, that I'm, still a bit under the radar, that people know I have it. So it's very encouraging to think that there's that much interest in it, because I'm learning about the brand every day. I'm researching and learning more. So I'm going to do me like you do you, Boo, and I'm going to bring down my Moschino, even though it's not a caftan. I'm going to do it. I'm going to have taking your wonderful advice and having some of the other things that aren't Moschino that represent my store, Walker Viden Luxury Consignment, that is, more in line with the non-Moschino enthusiast. But I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled that people are interested, because just when I think I'm not sure what I'm doing, then somebody bought 4 pieces off of First Dibs the other day, and I'm like, okay, well, maybe I am onto something. So I'm very encouraged by that. So tell me, I've only been to a few vintage shows, and when I go, I'm not even sure why I'm there, because I went for entertainment. I wasn't sourcing, and I wasn't really buying for myself. I just really wanted to kind of check it out and kind of get the lay of the land, see what's happening. But for people who come, who are the audience? What is the audience that attends? Is it just tourists in town for that week? Is it locals? Is it dealers looking for something for clients? Is it stylists? Who is this audience that comes?
The audience that comes will be dealers that will be coming from all over. We have a large population here in Palm Springs of vintage aficionados. We have a few vintage stores here in Palm Springs already, and those people know exactly what they're looking for. I like to give them a very diverse collection. So, you're not really looking at everybody who, I mentioned the word caftans, so that 30 dealers or 20 dealers are not having all caftans. I have dealers that are going to have inventory like what you have, some of the inventory like what I have, and, the public can go on both of our Instagram accounts and look at what we sell. My Instagram account is Mitchell's Palm Springs. So that'll give the audience an opportunity to see what my particular brand of vintage is. And vintage is all over the board. Jenny, you and I have talked about that. There are people that are selling denim. There's people selling Moschino. There are people selling vintage Issey Miyake. So it really does run the gamut. I specialize in collecting Pucci, because that's a very Palm Springs look and style. It's the aesthetic for Palm Springs, and that does really well out here. So I like to have a big archive of Emilio Pucci. But as far as the people that are coming, you're going to get people from all over. We've done advertising for this event on TV, on radio. We just did a print ad, which you're not aware of, but you're in it. It's the Collector magazine.
Ooh, I like it already.
Yeah, and that's a magazine that goes to all of the second-hand shops. It goes to flea markets. It goes to vintage stores. It goes everywhere. So, and that's based out of Los Angeles, but that covers the whole West Coast. So I really spared no expense trying to make this a really great event for not just the vendors, but for the shoppers, because I wanted to create something that was a niche market. Everybody can go to a flea market, because that's not really what I wanted. I wanted something that was really, really curated, hence the name Curated Vintage Event. And I was able to partner with Modernism Week because I have the experience with the clothing, and they really didn't have anybody that could do what I was doing. They have car shows, and they've got home tours, and they've got the double-decker bus where you get to ride around neighborhoods. But there really wasn't anybody that could do a fashion show or have a bunch of vintage dealers sell it all in one space, at a nice venue. So it was really upscale. And they're very happy that you're coming. They're happy that everybody else is going to be there, and I'm sure there's going to be lots of press on that. So I'm hoping that everybody that's listening is going to have the opportunity to get in their car and drive to Palm Springs It's really, really, really easy. If you're from Southern California, it's about 2 hours from San Diego and Los Angeles. A little farther if you're coming from, Santa Barbara. And if you're coming from Arizona, it's 3 hours. I've got 5 dealers that are coming from Arizona. So
that's incredible.
It can be done. And I have a dealer coming from Oregon, Portland, Oregon. There's a really, really wonderful dealer. Can I say the person's name?
You can say anyone's name.
Okay, sure.
You can say all of them.
No, it's okay.
We're going to get to all of them.
Okay, so there's a nice mother and daughter flying down from Portland, Oregon. Her store is called Modig, Modig, and she's got some pretty impressive pieces. And I gave you the list of everybody that's coming, but there's just so much variety. That's what I'm really excited about. I like to walk around and go, oh, look at this. Oh, my God, look at this. Oh, I forgot about this. So I think you're going to really enjoy it, too, because you'll have somebody in your booth and I'll have somebody in my booth, and you and I can walk around together and I can point certain things out to you. I think you're really going to get, you're going to be like a sponge. You're going to soak it up.
I hope so. Well, it sounds like the key to all of this is you do want and seek variety because it's, it's always good to have. But so like you're almost approaching it like a department store, like you have a little something for everyone. You've got a very diverse audience, very diverse group that's going to be shopping, and therefore as wide a range as possible in the clothes that are there, and clothing, shoes, and accessories is going to be really important. Now, is it primarily women's wear? Do you have anyone bringing any men's?
Oh, no, I have menswear coming. I have 3 dealers that are bringing menswear, and I carry menswear in my store. Half of my business is menswear, so there's definitely going to be something for the boys. Absolutely.
That's great. Well, I know from my perspective that this is you've been on me to get on one of these shows for a while, and the timing wasn't right, and finally the timing is all correct, and everything aligned so that I could be there. So this will be my very first show, and being able to have a pop up and take my JennieGirl's Closet Vintage Moschino on the road and signature pieces from Walker Viden is really exciting because I know that a lot of people do these shows all the time, these vintage shows, and I've been to a couple. They're pretty impressive, and it's one of those things that's always been on my radar, and I never saw it through. So I'm really happy to have my debut with yours because I think depending on how I do, this might be something that's really important for people who sell vintage to think about, like if they've never done a vintage show and if they've got the right kind of inventory, something to consider. I mean, I've done the PCC flea market. I've done the Rose Bowl flea market. It was excruciatingly painful to do because of how early you have to be there, how you have to set up. I mean, it's just really grueling. And this one it's just lovely. You go down the night before or the day before, you set up, you enjoy yourself like it's a whole thing. So it's really wonderful to think about presenting my clothes in this way. But I do want you've got this really wonderful background. Your family, you're from New York, where I lived for 16 years, by the way. I miss New York City, but were born in New York City, raised in Hudson, New York, and your family, your parents they ran a successful department store, and you got really involved in retail, traditional retail, at a very young age. You saw that. You've worked with an executive fashion coordinator and personal shopper at Bloomingdale's. While you were attending Northeastern University, and you also have specialized in Japanese and European designers such as Yves Saint Laurent, Chanel, Chloe, Paco Rabanne, et cetera, et cetera. And then you've kind of moved around, and now you find yourself in vintage. And I would love you to talk to our listeners just about the state of vintage these days, because everything seems to have changed with the onset of reselling and online platforms where people can now get their product out online. So can you tell me about what you've seen change and how you've seen things evolve in terms of vintage? Because I'm I stay stunned because it wasn't anything I was really focused on. And, whenever I get a premium for a vintage Moschino piece that I've come across, and there's that person who's willing to pay a premium for how unique it is and how well made it is and how special it is, that blows my mind because this is really big business. Can you talk to that?
Yeah. Vintage. Well, I think with the obviously the pandemic, that's changed everything. But vintage was in vogue before that. If you watch the award shows, you saw Cardi B coming out at the Grammys wearing a Terry Mugler dress from the 90s. It was a tulip dress. So the celebrities are embracing vintage. If you look at everybody that's on the award show, you'll see there's at least one or two people that show up in a vintage couture gown from some designer from the 80s or the 90s. And that's, aside from being environmentally friendly, it's a great design aesthetic. So, you really have to look at vintage as, yes, it's a business, but it's also beautiful. It's something that you've worn before. It's something that's wonderful. And of course, there's some vintage that should not be worn, of course. But I'm only talking about the stuff that's really, really beautiful. So that's really taken off. If you look at all of the buyers, there's people that are selling on Poshmark. There's all those secondary markets that people sell on, whether it's eBay or Etsy or at a flea market. Vintage is really in vogue, and I think the pandemic has really electrified that because people weren't able to really go shopping, so they were hunting online. They'd find what they could find at their local store, and they would resell it. And now that the pandemic is over, so to speak, the selling is a little bit more structured. So a perfect example of this is like the event that we had last year, the last 3 events. We had the Curated Vintage Event. That event took place outdoors. And even though it was edited and curated and beautiful, it was difficult because it was an outdoor event in the heat of Palm Springs, and it just didn't have that je ne sais quoi like it would be if it was inside a ballroom. So that's why we're so happy that we're back inside the ballroom, so that all these people that are looking for vintage can come. But that's what's in vogue. If you look through any magazine article on fashion, you're going to see something written about vintage. How vintage is hot. This is what it is. How vintage. How people are making more money selling vintage than they are selling new merchandise. Originally the Real never sold vintage. Now they sell vintage. So everybody's throwing their hat in the game because they see that it's in demand. But like for myself, I mean, I've been selling. I've had this store for close to 9.5 years. So I'm pretty much a veteran in Palm Springs. But there are other people that aren't quite as lucky. They have just opened up a store, or they're just getting into vintage, and that gave me the luxury of having this show where I can meet these people and I can look at what they have on Instagram and I can put everybody together. I feel like a matchmaker. That's basically what I do.
You absolutely are.
I don't think of myself as Mitchell's Palm Springs, an exhibitor, because I'm the host. Yes, I am the exhibitor. But when I'm trying to curate a show, I'm thinking of myself as a host, and I think to myself, okay, this is going to complement this vendor is going to complement this. And I don't want to have, obviously, you want to go to a restaurant and the only thing they have on the menu is steak, especially if you're a vegetarian. So you definitely want to have a lot of variety, and you want to have a certain caliber of product. And that's what you're going to get, and that's what the people are looking for. And that's why vintage is popular, because it is sustainable. People want something that is not going to disintegrate, something that is well made. Like, you just talked about how well made the Moschino product is. And that's because it's of a certain age. They never made clothes cheaply in the 30 years ago. They just didn't. There was only a certain way to make a garment. And now, they have all these tricks of the trade where they can make clothes much less expensive, but then of course it's not haute couture. So that's another reason why vintage is very popular. It's how the garment was made.
Sure. The lines of it, and the cuts, and all of that.
Absolutely, the style, the coloration. I mean, just to give you an example, I have a brand called Malcolm Star. It's by a designer, Yusuf Rizkallah, and the garments are appliques of felt and wool felt that's put on a skirt, and it must have taken I don't know 15 hours to make one skirt. You couldn't do that now. It wouldn't be cost effective.
Right.
And if you did that, the price would be astronomical.
Sure. Absolutely. Well, I think you are that's kind of very insightful because 9 years at this, and you're still. I mean, you're obviously doing well. You're thriving at 9 years. 9 years into this, you're able to organize these shows and bring people together. And I just love the fact that vintage is so popular. And the thing is, I've become expert in a brand, although I'm not done yet. I just spent all this money buying some of these older vintage catalogs online for Moschino, and you're talking with shipping like $40 and $50 a piece for these things. But every time I'm trying to keep learning. But I'm finding that in order to sell vintage and do well, I have to really learn about the brand. And I didn't go to fashion school. I went to fashion consumer school, which is I was a good shopper, as my mom was. So I know it from that side of things, but I don't have that traditional education you'd get if you went to a fashion school. So I am, kind of playing catch up in terms of my knowledge of, well, what is valuable, what is important in this market. And I've sold to museums, I've sold to exhibits, I've sold to vintage collectors, I've sold to other to stylists, to resellers, who have an audience perhaps I don't. And I think what's so interesting is that, you can sell to the middleman or you can sell to the end user, right? And so I'm always trying to get to the person who's going to pay the premium, that the very, very end user. But I have absolutely sold to everyone in between because we all have different audience. We all have a different way of getting our product out. And I'm thrilled when something that didn't move in my consignment shop and I had posted online on multiple platforms ended on the clearance rack. Still couldn't move it to my customers. A vintage dealer came in, was able to buy it and move it and sell it immediately, right? Because they have a completely different, group of people that buy from them. So I think that's really interesting that there's so many points at which we can move these beautiful garments along. And when people, like last week I had some women come into the store, and it always happens because having so much, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. I've been trying to count them up. It may be 1,000 pieces, but it's at least 600 items in the store that are Moschino. When you have so much in one place, and all of these things are super fun and vibrant and funny and humorous and great and bold and exciting, you put all that in one place, and people literally gasp in my store. And I think that the vintage has so much character, has so much personality compared to walking into any department store. I don't care if it's Neiman Marcus, the Chanel boutique, the Dillard's, Nordstrom. You walk in and you leave with a completely different feeling than if you were to go into a vintage store and be able to look at all of these things and see how just impeccable some of these things are and what personality they have. And the two things cannot even compete at all. And my prediction is that in the future, it's really going this way, is that all the brands are going to take responsibility for their garments that are in the second, and put them in the secondary market. And we will have the entire used Louis Vuitton store, the entire used Chanel store, the entire used, pre-owned, vintage, archival, Moschino, whatever. It's all going to happen. It's just a matter of when and who's going to do it first and who's willing to commit to constantly keeping that going. And the reason I keep mine going is, one, I love it. Two, it's so exciting when people get excited about it. And three, I'm learning every day and I'm fascinated. So I'm encouraged to keep going. But that's kind of how I see things headed. Where do you see things headed?
Well, I think heritage brands are always going to be in demand. You're always going to see people wanting Chanel, Louis Vuitton, Gucci. Those are like the three, I call them the three basic food groups of vintage. I could have a store full of vintage, the three things, Chanel, and I could survive. Is it one dimensional? Yes, it's one dimensional for me. I need something a little bit more variety. But and that's that's my take on vintage. I want to make sure everybody's happy. They walk out of my store with a purchase, and they can buy something because I'm not shopping for just one particular size. I take a whole size range. I take a lot of variety. I also buy things that I necessarily wouldn't buy for myself, because I'm buying for a store. That's a whole different conversation, though.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I love the fact that you keep a lot of sizes in there because it's one of the most challenging things about the consignment shop is we are limited to the size that arrives to us in the store. So we are not turning away large sizes. They just don't come in that often. I mean, they just don't. And when they do, they're gone very quickly. But this is so exciting. So let's talk about some of the people that are going to be there. So feel free to list out the people who are going to be there, on the show, so everyone can find them on Instagram. I already went through before this podcast, and I followed every single person that hadn't already followed from the list so that I could be connected. But I would love for listeners to be able to, go to your Instagram page and learn about the event, see if it's a weekend they want to take to come down to Palm Springs and check this out. But yeah, if you want to talk about and mention all of these wonderful vendors, I would love for you to do that and let people know how to find the information on this, how to find you, and how to find the vendors. And, of course, I will be there.
Absolutely. So the easiest way to find me is on Instagram, and that's Mitchell's Palm Springs, MITCHELLS, PALMSPRINGS, and that is on Instagram and Facebook too as well. If you want to buy tickets for the show, you could go to modernismweek.com and you can buy your tickets right then and there. It's at Temple Isaiah, and I am the host of Mitchell's Palm Springs. As far as the vendors go, I'm going to give you a listing of all the vendors that we have at the show. We have Beat Vintage, and their Instagram handle is at beat_vintage, and they are from Riverside, California. We have Clever Vintage, that's at Clever Vintage Clothing, and they are from Tucson, Arizona. We have Debutante Vintage Clothing joining us, and that's at Debutante Clothing, and they are from Pomona. We have Delicate Raymond Jewelry, and that's at Delicate Raymond Jewelry. They are from Los Angeles. We have Effortlessly Ebony, and that's at effortlessly.ebony, and she is from Phoenix, Arizona. We have Fern Mercantile, that's at Fern Mercantile, and she is from Los Angeles. We have yours truly, JennieGirl's Closet, and that's at JennieGirl's Closet, and you are from Pasadena. We have Lusterwear, and that's at Lusterwear, and that's Melania's company, and she is from Palm Springs, California. We have Mareri Pineda. She has gorgeous jewelry, and that's at La Dulce Vida _VTG, an acronym for vintage. We have myself, Mitchell's Palm Springs, and I'm at Mitchell's Palm Springs. We have Modig, that's from Portland, Oregon, and her hashtag is @shopmodig, SHOPMODIG. We have Normal Avenue Vintage. That's @Normal Avenue Vintage. And this gentleman is from Los Angeles. We have Sammy and Danny, and they are from Phoenix, Arizona. And her Instagram account is @Sammy, SAMMIE, .Danny, DANNIE. From Beverly Hills, California, we have Sophie of Paris. I've actually been in her store, and she has the most exquisite pieces you'll ever see. Her Instagram account is @Sophie, SOPHIEOFPARISBH, Sophie of Paris BH. We have Take Me Back Baby Vintage. She's from Los Angeles, and her Instagram is @TakeMeBackBabyVintage. From sunny Palm Springs, California, we have Vintage PS Gal, and her Instagram account is @Vintage P as in Palm Springs, S as in Springs, Gal, GAL. And last but not least, we have my dear friend Val, and her company is Well Worn Art. She is from Los Angeles, California, and her Instagram handle is @Well, WELL, Worn, WORNART, art. So that's the list. That's a good amount of people in a ballroom for something that we're really trying to make special. And I'm the host, but I'm actually relying on every one of the dealers to do this show. This is the most important part of this, is trying to get everybody together, and it takes a village. It's not just the host; it's all of the vendors getting together and connecting with everybody, and posting on Instagram, posting on social media, calling their clients, their customer base to come out. Because, as I have my customers that are coming, my customers know that they have to buy from everybody. It's not like they're going to walk down and say, oh, you can't buy from you can't buy from this person. That's not the way it works. Everybody buys from everybody. And granted, the nice thing about doing a show like this, what I realized is, even when I was outside, I gained so many new clients from the show that came to my store. I had people that didn't even know I had a store. They were like, oh, wow, I didn't even know this existed. And they come in, and you're going to find that too, because you're going to get the same thing. You're going to be like, oh, I'm going to, I'm driving through Pasadena. I'm going to stop at Walker Viden, and go shopping. So
right.
you're going to get a lot of people. I mean, that's everybody across the board. Well, that's going to happen. The difference between you and I is we're brick and mortar. So
right. That's
when
true.
you're not brick and mortar, it's a little different. You have to wait for the next show. So we do have a fan base that follows particular vintage vendors that will like whatever they're getting. And that's the vehicle of Instagram. Instagram's really helped that. I post something on Instagram and I say, DM me for information if you want to buy it. And, and boom, it's sold. So it's a lot easier than waiting for people to walk in your store. I know like you're on First Dibs, which is a beautiful platform. We all have the avenues that we sell things in. We just have to see what works for us as individuals.
Absolutely. I'm always tweaking what I do. I mean, in this, I'm always, I have no problem investing in something and seeing if it works for me, right? So I tried the Rose Bowl, doesn't work for me. I tried PCC Flea Market, doesn't work for me. I tried certain online platforms like Etsy, did not work for me. It's so bizarre. So First Dibs is working for me. Poshmark works for me. eBay works for me. Vestiaire Collective works for me, just to name some of them. And so I'm always trying to see what works. Now, I look to see if does a pop-up work for me, and I'm hoping that it does. I mean, I'm we're going to see. But I think this is just a wonderful event, and it's really great that you're sort of, you're the go-to guy in Palm Springs for all things vintage who can pull together something like this through your vast, group of connections. I think that's fantastic. And we're definitely doing all I can. I'm doing all I can on my part with the podcast. And, of course, Walker Viden will have a newsletter. And perhaps I can get some of these dealers to be on my podcast here in the next couple of weeks to further get the word out, because it's an effort to get to Palm Springs if you don't already live there, right? So you're talking about a day trip if you're coming just for the show, or a weekend trip if you're coming from Modernism Week. And usually with these big events, some things are already sold out. So, I mean, this is a really interesting thing to get your foot into and participate in if you haven't before. Get an Airbnb, get a group of friends, come down, check it out. But I think would be really, really important to have people think about this as something to do. And when I think about how I spend my weekends, I don't have on there I'm going to a vintage show. Like, it's not, you would think it would be with what I do for a living, and it's not on my list, but I'm going to start doing that. It's not like they happen every day, but I think it's important to see what's out there, see what other people are doing, learn from the other vendors, hear their stories, network, meet them, and kind of, learn what is happening in this area and being a part of it, because we're all evolving and we're all growing. And I love the fact that I can showcase my things this way. So, yeah, I'm going on a road trip. And, so that's that. Well, Mitchell, thank you so much. Do you have anything else to share with the listeners before we go? We know how to get in touch with you. The Modernism Week, we've talked about the vendors. Is there any words of wisdom you want to leave for our listeners about this event?
No, I'm just hoping that everybody that's listening is going to show up at the show, because you're really going to get a treat. It's really going to be a beautiful event, and I'm so grateful that you're actually joining me. And, it's the type of thing where you have to have some continuity. We do it twice a year, so you're going to want to do it, both. I tell the vendors, you're going to want to do it both times so that people come back and they see you and they get familiar with you. You just can't do something once and expect it to work out. Sometimes it does, but sometimes it doesn't. But you have to do it a couple times at least. But
well,
yes,
I'll tell you what I've decided to do. Because you have let people know that I have these Moschino pieces that are the same ones worn on the Nanny show, and I'm going to bring them.
Absolutely.
And they're pricey. It's for the person willing to pay a premium, I'll tell you right now. But I'm going to bring them, and that will be part of what I bring, is those specific pieces, so that people who want that kind of thing, if they're willing to pay a premium, I will have them. And it's been quite a joy to find these pieces and bring them in and have so many of them together. Like, I literally have things where I have 3 and 4 of the same thing in different sizes. So, if it's a piece somebody likes, perhaps we can, fit them in it. But I am bringing that down, as well as other pieces of Moschino. I'm bringing every single vest that I own down. That there are men's, for men's where I have the Moschino, mostly the men's vests. And to see about anybody can wear a vest. I'm bringing every one down that I own currently. Every vest is coming down, so that will be something. It's like kind of genderless, so anyone can wear a vest. So, as a matter of fact, most of the Moschino isn't my size. So if I want to put a piece on in the store, I literally go to the men's vest and put it on, and then I'm safe. I can wear it and look good in it. So that's what I'm bringing down, as well as some really interesting pieces, some really high-end vintage pieces from Walker Viden, and some handbags, some luxury handbags. I understand from you, your customers love a vintage Louis Vuitton, so I'm going to be bringing those down, and some other handbags as well to kind of round it out. So, so that's what I'm doing. Well, Mitchell, I really appreciate your time today. I hope listeners have enjoyed this. I definitely want to have you back on to just talk about all things vintage in a separate one, but this has been a wonderful introduction to you, to your event, to your store, Mitchell's Palm Springs, so that for people who go to Palm Springs, if you've not sought out his store, please look him up. From what I saw, what little I've seen on your Instagram, I cannot wait to see your store. It looks like it's just full of wonderful things, and that's what we love in this business is wonderful things. But thank you, Mitchell. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you so much, Jenny. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome. And this is Jennie Walker with Closet Conversations. Thank you for listening today. If you would like to be in touch, please go to my Instagram at JennieGirl's Closet. You can message me there. This podcast is available on iTunes and most digital platforms around the world. If you like what you heard today, please leave a review, 5 stars. We love all that on iTunes. If you want to be in touch about ideas for future shows, please just reach out to me. I read every message, and that's it. Look forward to having you with me on a future episode. Thank you again, Mitchell. Look forward to seeing you at the show.
Bye-bye.
For the ones finding new ways to ensure the job always gets done. For the ones wearing many hats. For the ones who are hands-on, even from far away. And the ones keeping business moving forward. We are Grainger, offering supplies and solutions for every industry, with 24/7 support and experienced staff at over 250 local branches. Call clickgrainger.com or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Aldi is hiring across the U.S. Over the past several years, we've grown rapidly, expanding from coast to coast. That means Aldi has more opportunities for dedicated, hardworking people like you to join us in our stores and warehouses. And more opportunities means more money in your pocket thanks to our recently increased wages. Join us and apply online at careers.aldi.us/radio. Welcome to more. Aldi is proud to be an equal opportunity employer.